ma no, non so.
Good evening. We are here with Lorenzo Temro Massari.
Hi, hello, hi, nice
It's
to be here.
honor having him here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Today at Podcast Myself, we want to discuss some important facts in the world of sports. And these facts are the cultures that are created within this world of sports, not in every single sport, however, maybe coexisting in two different sports at the same time. And this is why Lorenzo is one of the best example to describe it.
Thank you.
So Lorenzo, let me introduce you a bit. Lorenzo is half Brazilian, half Italian. He always played football. His father, since he played rugby, decided to introduce his son to football, a different sport, a different environment. But at the age of 17, Giacomo decided to change this, to change completely his career from becoming a maybe professional football player to becoming a professional rugby player. So tell us more about this.
I was playing in a Milanese amateur football club, VJ Junior, from the age of 11 approximately until the age of, as Francesco said, 17. And I was about to take off in the world of football as I was starting to play in the junior team of Inter Milan. Whilst developing, obviously, my ability and my skills for football, I also played with some friends rugby in the park in a normal, like in an afternoon. It's in a good sunny Milan. And as I was playing, I felt something that I didn't feel with football. I enjoyed football, absolutely, but rugby just gave me that extra, maybe physical push that football didn't have. So carrying on this passion in years, I decided to drop football before my takeoff and starting to play rugby in a more professional way.
Really interesting. Well, my first question is about your father. So we know that your father played professionally rugby. He also played a couple of appearances with the national team of Brazil.
Yes.
And so this is my first question. Does the role of your father play an active?
Well, obviously, as most kids trying to find their way, especially in sports, the influence of my father obviously did do a lot for me. But his influence, however, was not pushed towards rugby as one would expect. It was pushed more towards football, as you said earlier. Therefore, maybe the fact that it was neglected to me that rugby maybe was my way, I had a different approach to it. So instead of completely erasing it and without taking it into consideration, maybe this neglectancy that my father pushed on me maybe is what pushed me in the first place towards rugby.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. Then my first question is about the values. So you experience both professionally. We could also say that the youth team of Inter Milan can be considered professional.
Absolutely.
Both sports. So you maybe lived both values that are within the sports. We all know that rugby core elements are the values that are within it. The respect for the referee, but not only. Maybe in rugby is one of the most sports where you create that feeling of family between your teammates.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's a bond that me personally I didn't see in many other sports. However, also football has its values. Football has its respect, it's different. So my question is, did you see a big difference between the two environments, or in a way they can be connected?
Absolutely. I did see a huge difference, especially in respect and especially in the respect amongst the opposite team, which is something that in football, for as much as I love the sport, you don't see that much. Okay, so even if rugby is a more physical sport, okay, that involves tackling, involves scrums, does not, even with that physicality, it is not seen as a physical conflict like with the opponents, right? Whilst football, it's all about skills. It's all about you're a football player yourself, so you understand. It's all about demonstrating that you are the best, not only in your team, but in the whole pitch. Therefore, there is not the team bonding that there is in rugby, because it's in rugby it's much more about how the whole team plays, which is not the same as in football. So the answer to your question is yes.
I definitely understand that. And one huge difference that I also consider is the relationship with the referee.
Absolutely.
Or maybe not the referee, but all the authorities within the environment.
Absolutely.
Because in football, the referee is yet seen an authority. However, many times we've seen horrible scenes.
He is very disrespected. He or she, obviously, for that matter. The referee authority in football, especially amongst not like professional or like national league wise that you see on television, but especially amongst kids, it is not seen as an authority such as he's seen more as a 12th player of the team, right? For both teams speaking. Therefore, he's not demonstrated the amount of respect I feel that should be showed. Whilst in rugby is a completely different thing. In rugby, you never see a player, even if they don't agree with the call that a referee is making, maybe regarding a foul or regarding anything else, you never see a very furious reaction from players.
It's always respected, yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Then this is your third year that you play for Parabiago,
yes.
A team, for the ones that who don't know, plays in the first division, first championship in the Italian Serie A. So this is your real professional life. Have you ever regretted your choice changing from football to rugby?
There are some times where I don't regret, but I think what would have happened if I actually went aboard with the Inter Milan professional amateur team. But as a person that enjoys the sport and is not, it's very influenced by the circumstances, obviously, of the sport, I don't regret it at all, no. I feel like I've grown more as a person in 3 years in a rugby environment rather than 10 plus years in a football environment.
It can definitely be considered a skill, your way to connect two sports so different but yet so similar in some aspects. I was reading an article, a peer review article last day about South Africa, and they were speaking about families that came from the same culture, South African families, but maybe a family was more connected to rugby and a family more connected to football. And the evaluation and conclusion of this article was that yet they were living in the same cultures, but the sports values, the different sports values, made that culture within that family different. Like the study analyzed the way these two families coming from the same culture were really, really different, because, as you mentioned before, values maybe are really different. The respect is in both of them, but maybe stronger in rugby. However, the skills and the talent and the developing of your talent, like self-awareness, is more developed in football. So these are two different environments, but in my opinion, they can also be considered similar under a certain point of view, because we are speaking of sports, professional sports, dedication, maybe is the word that.
Yeah, well, for sure. Actually, weird that you say that you get South Africa as an example, because a good friend of mine is from South Africa, and he plays for the South African amateur team in rugby. And we were actually talking about this a couple months ago, how it's insane the amount of difference that is not felt that much in a place like Italy, where, as we all know, football is the major sport, absolutely the most popular sport that both kids and adults play. But in South Africa, it's actually very interesting how the whole culture, the whole country is split in half, much more than politics or anything else could create, actually. And that is very interesting that you use that as an example. It's insane.
Another question regarding your family is about your father. I want to know a bit how he got your decision of changing between football and rugby. I also know that your mother is Brazilian. Brazilian is also, maybe we can call it, the strongest country regarding football. However, rugby is also one of the major sports there. Were they happy, your parents, about this decision?
They were confused, as most of the people surrounding me were, because obviously being obviously in all modesty intended, one of the most prominent football talents in the country, especially in the northern part of the country. It took everyone by shock when I decided to throw my attention more on rugby than on football. I think it wasn't disappointing for my parents. It wasn't expected, as I said. It took everyone by surprise. My father, especially, he has supported me obviously throughout the whole process, even though he wasn't very fond of it, as we have said before. But like in all honesty, they took it pretty well, and they're supporting me, and I'm very grateful for it.
Because the aim of this research is to actually understand if these two sports can, in a way, melt together. So let me explain myself in a better way. Can football takes the best values out of rugby, and rugby takes the best value out of football? Like, football can increase that respect towards the referee, the example that we mentioned before, or in general, and can rugby develop that self-awareness, that skills that you need in football? Like, do you think it's possible to melt these two cultures, or maybe it's too difficult? There are cultures that exist in centuries and now they cannot be changed anymore.
If it were possible, I think it would have already happened, especially in a kind of globalization that we are living in today, right? I think the main reason that this can't happen is the values are very extreme, right?
Yeah.
So rugby on one side has very, very low recognition for one individual rather than the whole team. Whilst football, on the other hand, it's on a completely different side of the coin. It's much more about the single player rather than the whole team. Therefore, I think it's not possible. It would be great if it were, right? Obviously, for personal growth in rugby players and team building for the football. But to be honest, Francesco, I don't see how this is possible.
I definitely agree with you, because if it didn't happen until now, I see it's really difficult to happen.
And we're talking about sports and cultures that, as you said, have been living for ages, for centuries. So if it's quite sad if you think about it, obviously, because it would be me personally, having lived both sides. I would love to see a unification of the both, if not like just the two sports learning from one another. But I don't see that possible.
Okay, then Lorenzo, for today I would say that it's enough. Perfect. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again. It was an honor.
It was
so, guys, see you next week to podcast myself with another guest. Have a good evening.
Bye bye.